The gavel hadn't even fallen when Sarah leaned forward, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "Your Honor, my new husband deserves everything. He's been nothing but supportive through this difficult transition." She gestured toward Marcus, who sat smugly beside her, his expensive suit a stark contrast to my rumpled khakis. I felt the blood drain from my face as the words hit me like a physical blow. Everything? The house I'd worked 3 jobs to afford? The savings I'd built penny by penny during sleepless nights? The judge's pen moved across the papers as my world crumbled around me. This wasn't the woman I'd married 15 years ago, the one who used to worry about spending $20 on groceries. Marcus squeezed Sarah's hand, and they exchanged a look that made my stomach turn violently. Their synchronized smirk felt like a slap across my face, calculated and cruel. 15 years of marriage, of shared dreams and whispered promises, reduced to this moment of devastating betrayal. Sarah whispered something in Marcus's ear, and he chuckled, actually chuckled, while my life was being dissected by strangers in black robes. The humiliation burned through my chest like acid, spreading to every nerve ending. Other couples in the courtroom looked away, embarrassed by the raw display of cruelty. As they stood to leave, their victory secure, I caught Sarah's eye and whispered the only words I could manage through my constricted throat. "We'll see." Her smile faltered for just a second. The empty house echoed with every footstep, each sound bouncing off walls that had once held our laughter. Photo frames lay face down on the mantel. I couldn't bear to see our wedding pictures anymore, couldn't stomach the sight of her radiant smile from happier times. Bills covered the kitchen table like autumn leaves, each one a reminder of the financial storm approaching like a Category 5 hurricane. The silence was deafening after years of shared conversations over morning coffee. I'd always been the one working late, building something for us, dreaming of retirement together. Now us was just me, surrounded by the ghosts of better times. But as I sat in my favorite chair, something hardened inside me like cooling steel. I wouldn't let this destroy me. I'd lost this battle, but the war wasn't over. I remembered the night shifts at the factory, coming home with grease under my fingernails and exhaustion in my bones to find Sarah asleep, trusting me to provide for our future. "You're my rock," she used to say, kissing my forehead when I'd collapse into bed at dawn, her touch gentle and grateful. The second job at the warehouse, the weekend construction work. All of it to build the life she claimed to want. The white picket fence dream we'd sketched on napkins during our engagement. I remembered her tears when we couldn't afford the down payment on our first house. My promise that we'd make it work somehow. And we did. I made it work. Every callus, every aching muscle, every missed dinner and forgotten anniversary had been for her future. Our future. At least that's what I'd believed. Sorting through old files in my cramped apartment, I found a folder wedged behind the filing cabinet, forgotten in the chaos of our separation. My hands trembled as I opened it, revealing documents I'd completely forgotten existed in my devastation. Investment records from my grandfather's estate, business licenses bearing my name alone, property deeds with my signature from before I'd even met Sarah. The construction company contracts, the patents from my warehouse innovations, all predating my marriage by years. Most of our wealth wasn't ours at all. It was mine, built on my family's foundation and my own relentless work ethic. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than crushing despair rising in my chest. I felt the first warm flicker of hope, and with it, something sharper, the possibility of justice. Instead of calling Sarah and screaming the truth into the phone, I did something that surprised even me. I went completely quiet. My friend Jake recommended a lawyer who specialized in complex divorce cases, a shark with a reputation for finding hidden truths. Attorney Patricia Chun listened to my story with sharp, intelligent eyes, taking careful notes as I spread the documents across her mahogany desk like pieces of a puzzle. She examined each paper methodically, cross-referencing dates and signatures with the precision of a forensic accountant. The silence stretched for 10 minutes before she looked up, her expression serious and calculating. "If this is all authentic," she said, tapping her pen against the desk with measured rhythm, "they're not just in trouble. They're in deep, career-ending criminal charges kind of trouble. Her smile was absolutely predatory. Sarah's social media became a gallery of calculated humiliation, each post a deliberate knife twist. Photos of her and Marcus at expensive restaurants captioned, "Finally dining with someone who appreciates fine things and knows how to treat a lady properly." A picture of their weekend getaway to Napa Valley. Life is so much better when you're with someone on your level who shares your values. The comments poured in from mutual friends, heart emojis and congratulations that felt like tiny knives piercing my already wounded pride. She'd even posted a photo of their new BMW, the one bought with what should have been half my assets. I scrolled through each post with clenched jaw, my anger building with every passive-aggressive caption. But instead of blind rage, I felt something cooler and more dangerous. Pure, calculating determination. Let her gloat now while she still could. I called Tom, my old business partner from the warehouse days, the one friend who'd never quite trusted Sarah's motives. He tried to warn me about her once, cryptically mentioning how she'd asked too many detailed questions about my finances during a company barbecue, questions that had made him uncomfortable. Now he understood exactly why those conversations had bothered him. "I kept records of everything," he said over coffee, his loyalty evident in every word. Meeting times, conversations, who contributed what to which projects, even email chains about your innovations. His memory was sharp, and his documentation was meticulous to an almost obsessive degree. We spent hours reconstructing the timeline of my business ventures, my investments, my contributions to everything Sarah now claimed as community property. Tom's unwavering loyalty felt like armor. I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. Patricia's private investigator found it buried deep in financial records, hidden like a smoking gun. A joint account I'd never seen before, never signed for, never even knew existed. Sarah had been systematically transferring money from our shared accounts into this secret one, then moving it directly to Marcus's failing consulting business in carefully timed installments. The amounts were staggering, nearly $40,000 over 6 months, all while she was already secretly planning our divorce and playing the role of concerned wife in counseling sessions. My stomach dropped as I read the bank statements, each transaction a separate betrayal. She hadn't just left me for another man. She'd methodically robbed me blind to fund her new life with my own money. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought humanly possible. But now I had something more powerful than hurt feelings. I had ironclad evidence. When Sarah called about dividing the remaining furniture, I surprised her with complete cooperation, my voice steady and resigned. "Take whatever you want," I said, forcing defeat into my tone. "You're absolutely right. Marcus deserves nice things after everything he's done for you." She paused on the other end, clearly expecting our usual argument, confused by my sudden surrender. In public, I played the defeated ex-husband perfectly, letting friends and family pity me while I nodded sadly at their condolences. But behind the scenes, Patricia's legal team was building an airtight case with military precision. Documents were authenticated by experts, witnesses were interviewed under oath, financial trails were mapped with forensic accuracy. The manila envelope I personally mailed to the courthouse contained enough evidence to reshape everything. Sarah thought she'd won the war. She had absolutely no idea the real battle was just beginning. Patricia spread the completed case file across her conference table like a winning poker hand, each document precisely placed for maximum impact. Bank records, property deeds, witness statements, and authenticated documents painted a crystal-clear picture of Sarah's systematic deception and theft. She read through each section carefully, her smile growing wider and more satisfied with every page she turned. "This is absolutely beautiful work," she murmured, organizing the evidence chronologically with the care of an art curator. "Fraud, theft, perjury, asset concealment. She's violated so many federal and state statutes I've actually lost count." She looked up at me, her eyes gleaming with professional satisfaction and something approaching glee. "When we present this in court, it won't just bury them legally. It'll bury them so deep they'll need archaeology to find their way back to the surface of respectability." Sarah strutted into the courthouse wearing a new designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and Marcus's arm draped around her like a trophy she'd won. Her confidence radiated across the marble floors as she greeted her lawyer with air kisses and theatrical familiarity. "This is just a formality," she told Marcus loud enough for me to hear, her voice carrying that same smugness from our first hearing. "The judge already ruled in our favor. It's just paperwork now." He squeezed her waist possessively, his expensive watch catching the courthouse lights. "Everything that was his is ours now, baby. We can start planning that European honeymoon." They looked like they were attending a social event rather than a legal proceeding, their laughter echoing off the walls. I watched them from across the lobby, my expression carefully neutral. Patricia stood beside me, her briefcase heavy with truth they couldn't imagine existed. As Patricia submitted our thick evidence packet to the court clerk, I watched Judge Morrison's face with the intensity of a hawk. Her eyebrows rose slightly as she flipped through the first few pages, her routine boredom quickly shifting to sharp, focused attention. She paused at the bank statements, her expression hardening as she absorbed the implications. Sarah noticed the change too. I saw her lean forward in her seat, whispering urgently to her lawyer with growing anxiety. The judge continued reading methodically, her pen making occasional notes in the margins. The courtroom fell silent except for the whisper of turning pages and the soft scratch of her writing. Finally, she looked up, her penetrating gaze moving slowly from Sarah to Marcus to me. Something fundamental had changed in the room's atmosphere. The confusion and dawning panic on Sarah's face was absolutely beautiful to witness. Patricia's voice carried clearly through the hushed courtroom as she presented the secret bank account records with prosecutorial precision. "Your Honor, these documents show systematic financial deception beginning 8 months before the divorce filing was initiated." Audible gasps rippled through the gallery like a wave. Sarah's face went completely white as the incriminating numbers appeared on the overhead screen for everyone to see. $43,000, transferred in carefully calculated increments designed to avoid automatic bank reporting thresholds. Her lawyer frantically shuffled through his papers, clearly blindsided by evidence he'd never seen before. Marcus gripped Sarah's hand so tightly his knuckles went white, his confident facade cracking visibly. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw genuine fear creeping into Sarah's eyes. The smug confidence that had sustained her was finally beginning to crack. Just a little, but it was a start. The evidence unfolded like a perfectly orchestrated symphony, each document building on the last with devastating precision. Every transfer was meticulously dated, every withdrawal documented with bank timestamps that couldn't be disputed or explained away. Patricia's presentation showed exactly how Sarah had begun systematically moving money the moment she'd met Marcus at that conference, months before our marriage counseling sessions had even started. She was funding her new relationship while pretending to save her marriage, Patricia explained to the riveted courtroom. The illegal pre-divorce asset transfer was clear, undeniable, and thoroughly documented. Judge Morrison's face hardened progressively as the pattern emerged with mathematical clarity. Sarah's lawyer objected weakly, but had absolutely no counter-evidence to present. The audience murmured among themselves with growing shock. Even some of Sarah's longtime friends looked genuinely horrified. Her perfect plan was unraveling thread by thread. The underdog was definitely rising. Tom took the witness stand with the confidence of a man telling the absolute, unvarnished truth. His testimony was methodical and devastating. How I'd built the business from nothing, worked 80-hour weeks without complaint, invested every penny of my inheritance into our shared future. He had documents, photographs, even recorded conversations about my contributions and innovations. Sarah's lawyer tried desperately to discredit him, suggesting bias and friendship, but Tom's records were absolutely immaculate and went back years. "I watched him sacrifice everything for that woman," Tom said, looking directly at Judge Morrison with unwavering sincerity. "Every innovation, every patent, every business success. It was his sweat, his ideas, his family's foundation that made it possible." Judge Morrison listened intently, occasionally nodding as she took notes. Sarah slumped progressively in her chair with each damning word. Her carefully constructed narrative was crumbling completely under scrutiny. As Patricia methodically presented evidence of Marcus's failing business and Sarah's secret funding of his ventures, he finally reached his breaking point and snapped completely. "This is absolutely ridiculous," he shouted, jumping to his feet with his face flushed red. "She had every legal right to help me. We're married now, for God's sake." Judge Morrison's gavel cracked like thunder, the sound echoing off the courtroom walls. "Sir, you will control yourself in my courtroom immediately, or you will be removed by security." Her voice was ice-cold steel. Marcus's face turned an even deeper shade of red, sweat beading visibly on his forehead despite the air conditioning. He looked less like the confident man who'd smirked at me weeks ago and more like a cornered, desperate animal. Sarah tugged frantically at his sleeve, her eyes pleading with him to sit down and shut up. Their united front was fracturing badly under the pressure. For the first time since this entire ordeal had begun, I allowed myself to smile genuinely. Not a smirk of petty revenge, but a quiet, satisfied expression of long-awaited vindication finally arriving. The truth was seeing daylight after months of darkness and deception. Sarah caught my expression and actually flinched, the reality of her deteriorating situation finally sinking in with devastating clarity. Her lawyer whispered frantically in her ear, probably explaining in stark terms how badly this was going for her legally and financially. Marcus sat rigidly beside her, his earlier confidence completely evaporated, replaced by visible panic. I felt the eyes of everyone in the courtroom on me. Friends, family, complete strangers who'd come to witness justice being served. The man they'd all pitted just weeks ago was rising from the ashes like a phoenix. The tables weren't just turning. They were flipping completely and permanently. Judge Morrison's authoritative voice filled every corner of the courtroom as she read from the authenticated documents with judicial precision. Investment records clearly show the plaintiff built his portfolio using inheritance from his grandfather's estate, predating the marriage by 7 full years. Each word was a surgical strike against Sarah's fraudulent claims. Business licenses, patent applications, and property deeds all bear the plaintiff's signature alone, with no co-signer listed. The judge's voice grew stronger and more emphatic with each devastating revelation. Furthermore, concrete evidence shows systematic transfer of marital assets to fund the defendant's undisclosed business ventures without plaintiff knowledge or consent. Sarah's breathing became increasingly shallow and rapid. Her carefully constructed web of lies was being dismantled sentence by sentence, in public on the permanent court record. There would be no recovering from this exposure. The gallery erupted in genuinely shocked murmurs as the full scope of Sarah's systematic deception became crystal clear to everyone present. My sister covered her mouth in complete disbelief, her eyes wide with horror. Even Sarah's own mother looked absolutely stunned, her eyes darting frantically between her daughter and the damning evidence displays. The local newspaper reporter scribbled furiously, "This story would definitely make tomorrow's front page headlines." Sarah's friends, who had congratulated her enthusiastically on social media, now whispered among themselves with obvious embarrassment and betrayal. One of them shook her head in disgust and quietly left the courtroom entirely. The woman they'd thought was the victim of a bad marriage had been revealed as the calculated perpetrator of systematic theft. Sarah's perfect reputation was imploding in real time, and everyone she cared about was witnessing her complete downfall. The social humiliation was almost as devastating as the legal consequences. Marcus's survival instincts kicked in immediately as the walls closed around them both, and he threw Sarah completely under the bus without hesitation. "Your Honor," he said, standing suddenly with his hands raised defensively. "I had absolutely no knowledge of these financial transfers or any illegal activity. Sarah handled all of our financial arrangements independently." He was abandoning her completely, his voice taking on the tone of an innocent victim who'd been deceived. "I trusted her implicitly when she said the money was rightfully hers from the divorce settlement. I never questioned her honesty." Sarah's eyes widened in shock and complete betrayal, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air on dry land. The man she'd destroyed our marriage for was now betraying her exactly as she had betrayed me. The poetic justice was almost too perfect to believe, like something from a movie. Even Patricia looked genuinely impressed by the dramatic irony unfolding before us. The transformation was absolutely complete and devastating to witness. The confident woman who'd smugly claimed her new husband deserved everything was gone entirely, replaced by a trembling shell of her former self. Sarah's designer composure cracked entirely as tears streamed down her cheeks, ruining her expensive makeup. "Your Honor, please," she begged, her voice breaking pathetically. "I made terrible mistakes, but I never meant for it to go this far." I was confused and scared. The arrogance had evaporated completely, replaced by desperate pleading and raw panic. Her mascara ran in dark streaks down her face as she finally realized the true magnitude of her situation. This was the same woman who'd laughed coldly at my pain just weeks ago, who'd posted mocking photos on social media. Now she was the one begging for mercy from a legal system she tried to manipulate and deceive. Judge Morrison's voice carried the full weight of absolute legal authority as she delivered the final judgment. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, I find the defendant guilty of marital asset fraud, financial deception, and perjury before this court. The gavel fell like thunder, echoing with finality. The original divorce settlement is hereby completely reversed and nullified. Sarah collapsed into her chair as if she'd been physically struck by lightning. Furthermore, the defendant will pay full restitution of all stolen funds plus court costs, attorney fees, and punitive damages. Not only would she get nothing from the divorce, she now owed me significantly more than she'd stolen. The judge continued relentlessly, "All transferred assets will be returned immediately, and criminal charges may be filed separately." I walked away from that courthouse with more than I'd ever expected to recover. Justice had landed with absolutely devastating precision, and everyone in that room had witnessed it. Outside the courthouse, newspaper photographers captured Sarah and Marcus's complete walk of shame for tomorrow's headlines. Her once perfect hair hung limp and disheveled, her designer dress wrinkled from hours of stress and panic. Marcus walked several feet apart from her, already visibly distancing himself from the scandal and her radioactive reputation. My sister hugged me tightly on the courthouse steps as reporters approached asking for comments about the dramatic reversal. "No comment," I said simply, maintaining my dignity. Justice speaks for itself quite clearly. The local news would lead with this story tonight, the scheming ex-wife who tried to steal everything and lost it all spectacularly. Social media would buzz with updates and commentary for days. But I wasn't thinking about revenge anymore or savoring her downfall. I was thinking about the bright future I could now rebuild from solid ground, free from her manipulation and lies. 6 months later, I stood in warm sunlight outside my completely reclaimed house, holding the keys that were rightfully mine. Sarah had been forced by court order to return everything: the car, the jewelry, even the furniture she'd taken in her vindictive fury. Her social media had gone completely silent after the scandal broke nationwide, her reputation in ruins. Marcus had filed for divorce from her within a month, citing irreconcilable differences and fundamental misrepresentation. The ultimate irony wasn't lost on anyone. In my mind, I could still hear Sarah's confident voice from that first devastating court date. "My new husband deserves everything." She'd been absolutely right about that. Marcus deserved every consequence of his greed and manipulation, and I deserved the hard-won peace that finally came with complete justice. Sometimes the truth really does set you free, and sometimes good people do finish first.